There was something wrong with the house next door. Not because it looked abandoned. It didn't. The grass was cut. The windows were clean. The porch light worked every night. And every morning at exactly 7:15, a black SUV would leave the driveway. The strange part was, nobody had ever seen the person driving it. Not once. And 6 weeks after the house was sold, the neighbors finally realized something even stranger. The house had no front door. The house belonged to a quiet street called Willow Lane. There were only 11 houses on the entire block. People knew each other. They borrowed lawn equipment. They collected each other's mail. They complained about the same broken streetlight. So when the old Miller property was sold, everyone noticed. The house had been empty for almost 2 years. Then one Monday morning, a moving truck arrived. A man stepped out. He looked to be somewhere in his 40s. Tall, thin, dark hair. He wore a gray coat despite the summer heat. He never introduced himself. He simply unlocked the house, walked inside, and closed the door. For the next 3 days, he never came back outside. The first unusual thing happened that Thursday. At 2:13 in the morning, Emily Carter, who lived directly across the street, woke up to a strange sound. Knocking. Not loud knocking. 3 soft taps. She looked outside. The new house was completely dark. Then she noticed something. A light was moving behind one of the upstairs curtains. Slowly. Back and forth. As if someone was walking through the room carrying a flashlight. Emily watched for almost a minute. Then the light stopped. It remained perfectly still, right beside the window. The next morning, she asked the new neighbor if everything was okay. He looked confused. Then he said, "I don't have an upstairs." Emily laughed. She assumed he was joking. But later that afternoon, she drove past the house. She slowed down, and for the first time, she really looked at it. The house had 2 visible floors, but there were no upstairs windows. Only one long wall of brick. No windows. No balcony. Nothing. Emily went home unsettled. That night, she checked the house again. 2:13 a.m. 3 knocks. This time, they weren't coming from inside the house. They were coming from her own front door. Emily didn't answer. She stayed in bed, listening. 3 more knocks. Then silence. She finally walked downstairs. The front door was locked. The deadbolt was still in place. Nobody was outside, but something had changed. A small envelope had been pushed underneath the door. There was no name on it, no address, only one sentence written across the front. "You saw the upstairs." Emily immediately called the police. But before she could explain everything, her doorbell rang. She looked at the camera. The screen showed the street, her driveway, the empty sidewalk, and the house next door. Then the camera suddenly switched angles. For 1 second, Emily saw herself, standing inside her own hallway, looking at the camera. Except, she was still holding the phone in her bedroom. 2 officers arrived 20 minutes later. They checked Emily's house, the yard, the porch. Nothing. Then Emily pointed across the street. The officers walked over. They knocked on the neighbor's door. No answer. They knocked again. Still nothing. One officer tried the handle. The door opened. The house was empty. Completely empty. No furniture. No boxes. No clothes. Nothing. Except for one thing. On the living room wall, someone had drawn a perfect rectangle in black paint. It looked exactly like a door, but there was no door there. One officer touched the black rectangle. The wall felt cold, much colder than the rest of the room. Then he noticed something. The paint wasn't dry. It was wet. He wiped his finger across it. Black paint covered his glove. Then, from behind the wall, came a sound. 3 knocks. The officers froze. 3 more. The same rhythm Emily had heard. One officer stepped backward. The other whispered, "There's someone inside." They searched the entire house. There was nowhere for anyone to hide. No basement, no attic, no upstairs. Just 4 empty rooms, and that painted door. The next morning, the town building department was contacted. An employee pulled the original blueprint for the property. According to the plans, the house had always been one story. There had never been an upstairs, but the blueprint showed something else. A narrow hallway, running through the center of the house. It wasn't accessible from outside, and it wasn't connected to any room. The employee said it was probably an old construction error. Then he noticed the date on the blueprint. The house had been built in 1968. The new neighbor's name was already written in the margin. 3 days later, the black SUV returned. The new neighbor stepped out. He walked straight into his house. This time, Emily was watching from behind her curtains. At 2:13 a.m., the upstairs light appeared again. Except there was still no upstairs. The light moved slowly behind a brick wall. Then, Emily saw something that made her step away from the window. A shadow appeared on the brick exterior, a human silhouette, walking from one side of the wall to the other. Then it stopped. The head turned toward Emily's house. Emily recorded the wall on her phone. She zoomed in. The shadow disappeared. Then, something appeared on the screen. A second window, not on the house. Inside the video, Emily paused the recording. There was a room behind the wall. A narrow room. A chair. A lamp. And someone sitting in the chair. The person was facing away from the camera. Emily zoomed in. The person slowly turned. It was the new neighbor. But he wasn't sitting inside the house. He was sitting inside the wall. Emily showed the video to the police. They couldn't explain it. One officer suggested the image had been manipulated. Another suggested the phone camera was malfunctioning. Then Emily received another envelope. This time, there were no words on it, only a photograph. It showed Emily standing at her bedroom window. The photograph had clearly been taken from inside her room. On the back, someone had written, "Don't look through the wall again." That night, Emily packed a bag. She decided to leave. But when she opened her front door, the new neighbor was standing across the street. And for the first time, he smiled. Emily didn't leave. Not yet. Something about the man's smile had convinced her that leaving would only make things worse. So she called her brother. He arrived 20 minutes later. Together, they crossed the street. The neighbor's house was unlocked. Again, empty. But this time, the black rectangle on the wall was gone. There was a real door there. A wooden door. Emily stared at it. Her brother asked, "Was this here before?" She shook her head. No. The door opened by itself. Behind it was a narrow hallway. The hallway looked impossibly long. It should have ended at the exterior wall. Instead, it continued. Doors lined both sides. Every door had a number. Emily noticed something. The numbers continued past 20, then 30, then 40. Her brother whispered, "This house isn't that big." They kept walking. At the end of the hallway was one final door. There was no number on it, only a small handwritten name. Emily's. Emily reached for the handle. Her brother stopped her. He pointed at the floor. There were footprints. Fresh ones. They came from inside the room and stopped directly in front of them. No footprints led away. Then someone knocked from the other side. 3 times. Emily stepped backward. A voice spoke. It was the neighbor, but his voice sounded distant, almost like it was coming through a radio. He said, "You're not supposed to be here yet." Emily's brother asked, "Who are you?" The voice answered, "I live where this house remembers people." Then the lights went out. When the lights returned, the hallway was gone. Emily and her brother were standing in the empty living room. The wooden door had disappeared. So had the neighbor. They ran outside. The black SUV was gone. Police arrived later that night. They searched the house from top to bottom. Again, There was no hallway, no second floor, no hidden room, nothing. But when one officer checked the wall, he found something underneath the paint, a layer of old wallpaper. They peeled it back. Underneath were dozens of photographs. Every photograph showed someone who had lived on Willow Lane. Some were decades old, some were recent, and the newest photograph was Emily. The police took all the photographs as evidence. The house was sealed. The new neighbor was never found. His name didn't appear on the property records. No driver's license, no employment records, nothing. It was as if he had never existed. But there was one photograph the police couldn't explain. It was found behind the black rectangle. The photograph showed the entire neighborhood, every house, every street, every person, and in the center stood the new neighbor. The photograph was dated 1974. 6 months later, the house was demolished. The town finally decided to build something else on the property. The demolition crew arrived early one morning. They tore down the walls, removed the roof, destroyed the foundation. Nothing unusual was found, except for one thing. Behind what had been the living room wall, the workers found a wooden door. There was no room behind it, no hallway, just darkness. The foreman opened it, and inside, someone had placed a single chair. On the chair was a fresh photograph. The photograph showed Willow Lane, the same street, the same houses, but the house next door was different. It had a front door, an upstairs, and someone was standing in the upstairs window. The demolition crew couldn't identify the person, but Emily could. It was the new neighbor. Standing beside him was Emily, except the photograph was dated next year. No one ever found out who the man was. The house was demolished. The property was sold, and nothing strange happened there again. At least, that's what the town records say. Because every year, on the same date, a new photograph appears in the mailbox of the house across the street. Nobody sees who delivers it, and every photograph shows the same thing. The house next door, even though there hasn't been a house there for years.